Well, yesterday at around this time, KSLA gave you the first alert to over 20,000 outages. Now, that number sitting at around 110 now. But yesterday, more than 14,000 of those outages were in Bossier Parish. Now, thankfully, nearly all of the outages have since decreased, but the threat of severe weather continues. And SWEPCO says that yesterday's outages were part of an emergency outage that the company says is extremely rare. Now, as a result of the storm system that hit parts of the country heavily yesterday, there was large damage to large transmission lines, and SWEPCO was instructed by the Southwest Power Pool, its regional transmission organization, to begin powering down the grid in order to protect it. SWEPCO says if they had stayed on, they risked setting that grid on fire and impacting a much larger expanse of the country. It says that these mechanisms are put in place to protect the national grid.
This is a very infrequent event, very rare event. To capture something that our president quoted to me, he said that, in his 35 years, the urgency and immediacy of this, what we call load shed event, was once in a lifetime for him, has never occurred. So this is not something that the customer should expect to see on a regular basis. This is not something that the customer should expect to see annually.
Now, SWEPCO says that they cannot say that this will never happen because emergencies are unplanned, but this is something that they plan for and react to appropriately.